What is up, YouTube? I'm Keith from Cutlass Board Games, and we play Clocktower every week here. This was never the intended use for the channel because I also make a lot of board games and do a lot of other board game content, but Clocktower, especially with the online client, is a very easy and fun thing for me to do from home. And if you are unfamiliar with me and my work, I am known for making the tinker posting, shit posting group, unfortunately. But also I've been playing Clocktower for many years. I was part of the original playtesting group in Sydney. I ran the regular Sydney group alongside some of the other talented storytellers for quite some time. Look, I've been doing it for a long time. And now that we've come back to playing regularly and weekly, I've been cooking up some custom stuff so that I can, introduce some new and cool things to the game. People try some things out and maybe make some cool YouTube videos for the channel. But this time I wanted to go through my backlog of all of my existing ideas. Some of these have been play tested. Some of these were made for specific scripts. Some of these were things that I now use regularly in other scripts. Some of these have changed since this exact listing. And we're going to go through them. We're going to go through what's good, what's bad, what the inspiration for it was, what I thought behind it, what I was thinking, this kind of thing. There's a couple of different things to note at the start. The tool that I use, Bloodstar Clocktower, doesn't make things the correct color that I like. So there's a couple outsiders here in the townsfolk. As you can see, it makes it like the old color before the update. Same with the orange. I just really kind of prefer the red for everything. So we are going to use a quick little spoilers, I guess, but we're going to go through all these. We're going to talk about them. And then I have a new just script that I'm working on. I'm going to show off as well. But let's get started. First off, we have the Dandy. This is a townsfolk. Whenever an evil player nominates you, they are drunk until dawn. This is trying to be a character that is a downside of the evil team if they nominate you, like if the demon's being very aggressive in the nominations. Paired with something like a town crier can really punish aggressive minion players, which I think was kind of interesting. The issue is it's something like the courtier. It feels like a worse courtier, where the downside to the courtier's ability is if you miss. So if you are really confident in something, or the game is going away, that especially in Bad Moon Rising, if a specific minion like a mastermind or whatever might be a problem, you can neutralize that issue and you don't have to personally worry about that worldview. The Dandy doesn't give you any certainty. You have no idea when you really has activated or anything like that. So it's an idea. It's something that doesn't exist yet, and then maybe it'll be reworked later to be something more effective or better or different or whatever, right? That's what a lot of these characters are. They are ideas. They're ideas. And maybe one day they'll be good and useful. Also, all of the character icons I did using stock vector art and some Photoshop editing skills. So some of them aren't great. Some of them are kind of okay. Anyway, next up is the accountant. Each day during the day, privately ask the storyteller a question. The storyteller can only answer with numbers. So very clearly, this is a riff on the artist, except instead of a yes or no question, it's a numbers question. And this character has the very obvious downside of you ask the storyteller how many steps away from me is the demon. That gives you a 50-50 on where the demon could be, and that's a little too strong, unfortunately. And the notary has a similar problem. You start knowing how many steps to your nearest evil player detecting a demon, a little bit too strong. Because this is from a specific period of time when I was playing around with a lot of steps. The script that this is from was an early version of Empire of Dirt, where I really wanted to have a whole bunch of different number of steps characters, because I feel like that is an underexplored space. Anyway, next is the Groover. Each night you learn the number of steps to the nearest player who changed character or alignment. This is really helpful for stuff like Snake Charmer or an existing bit hag. It can help people confirm that there is a bit hag in play. Something like a barber swap happens or the Hatter happens, then the group can find evil players pretty easily. But there is a demon. I think it's either Devil or Death, because it is from this tarot specific script, where Devil and Death work well together. And I'll go over these later, but Devil kills based on the number of steps, and Death creates a devil and swaps, kind of like the Fangu. And so Groover was the theme that kind of was like, maybe I should be playing around with a demon that works like that. But anyway, we'll get to that later. Next is the Anzena. This is trying to be a good player version of the Devil's Advocate. Each night, asterisks, choose a player. They are sober and cannot be executed tomorrow. So this is similar to the Monk Vortox interaction, where the Monk will stop the player getting misinformation because it's protecting them from the demon, everything that the demon does. The Enzena specifically stops poisoning and drunkenness and prevents execution. This was something that sat on the early version of the Empire of Dirt script, and you can kind of see the variations in a theme of that kind of antiquities, let's say, in the icons. I don't think that this is a terrible character, but I think it needs to be on a specific script. It's probably too powerful for something like Trouble Bullying, and I don't particularly like execution prevention. Some of the problems that Batman Rising has is the game can very easily drag on for a really long time because of stuff like Pacifist, Tea Lady, Devil's Advocate. And it's really hard for a storyteller to have control over when those things happen, compared to a Pacifist, where it's like you have complete control over when it happens. The DA is like, well, I picked the guy. And you're like, well, that guy doesn't die. We wasted a day. One less death in the game. So this is one that I'm like hesitant to come back to. Next is the Antiquarian. I think this is a great character. This is like a... I also think it's slightly too powerful, but it's doing what I want. It's a multi-use Night Watchman type character. Each night, asterisks. Choose a player. They learn how many steps they are to their nearest antiquarian. Everyone that reads this goes, oh, is there going to be multiple antiquarians? It's like, no. Something like a spy might register as an antiquarian and be closer to the person that you selected. Or when we see later the Cogbelcher, which was specifically the reason why it's worded like that, because they were together at the time, where the Cogbelcher makes all the players in a direction register falsely to townsfolk abilities, so they could particularly be in any n number of antiquarians. Anyway. But yeah, like the Night Watchman, it goes, hey, I selected you. Did you get dialed by an antiquarian? They go, yes. And you go, was it a 3 because I'm 3 steps away? But this is one of those characters where people aren't going up to you and going, hey, did you get dialed by an antiquarian? That's me. Because the number might be wrong, right? So it's really hard to bluff. So I think it's really close to where I want it to be. So it might end up being something more like they learn that they've been selected by an antiquarian tonight or something like that. So similar to a Night Watchman, but multiple use, but doesn't identify the player that selected them. Maybe. Next is the Dowser. Each night, choose a player. You learn how many of their neighbors are evil. An evil player chosen makes you drunk until dusk. This is an empath, except you point the empath at something. So instead of it just being my neighbors, I'm picking your neighbors, I'm picking your neighbors, and you're awkwardly trying to figure out exactly where the evil team fits in amongst things. Because if you are picking an evil player directly, you'll get a wrong read. But if you pick next to an evil player, you go, yeah, there's an evil player, and you can kind of slowly narrow it down, which I think is okay. I think it's a slightly more interactive version of the empath, which was kind of the goal. Like the empath is just like, okay, I got a 1, or I'm getting a 0 forever, and then I die. Cool, I trust 2 people, but I have no agency. I wasn't able to do anything with that. I could maybe try and get one of them executed, but I know that they're good, so it's not really that helpful. Whereas the Dowser is like, I can pick myself. I know I'm not evil. I know I'm going to get correct information on my neighbors. God forbid anyone else interact with me. And then you go, okay, no evil neighbors. I'll then move down the line or whatever and slowly try and find evil players, which I think is slightly more interesting. That was kind of the idea. I don't think it really works in practice. So that might be something that we come back to. Next is the Framed. I think the Framed was an interesting character, but in every time we did it in playtesting, the players did not do what I was expecting, and it didn't really function very well. So each night, asterisk, if you were slated for execution, but another player was executed instead, learn 1 good player. So the goal is to get kind of exactly quorum, get like exactly half, of all the votes. Say it's a play game, you're 4 votes, and then try and get somebody else on the block with 5 and get executed, so that you can then learn the good information. The other part of that was that this was supposed to be a really, really good evil player bluff, because if you've been playing evil or your bluff's fallen apart, and you're like, look, I was intentionally trying to draw heat because I'm the Framed, please lift off me, we should execute this person instead, and I'll get really good info. In testing, this never happened. But it's also like, without having the ability to play the script multiple times, the character comes up multiple times, it's going to take a while for people to kind of figure out these strategies, right? So I can't tell if it's something that was just really far away from what people had experience with, or what was kind of done. And the people that I've been playing with have played all of base 3 and usually some more of the new experimental characters. So I'm fully expecting some of these things to happen. And so I can't tell if it's a failure of the character or the testing group just didn't work with this particular thing. But I want to have something like this, perhaps. And we'll see later. I have used an idea from this in another character, in an outsider. So maybe we'll see it again. Next is the Turncoat. This is an outsider. This next couple are outsiders. If the demon is executed, you might become evil and become the demon. Great. You're kind of a turbo politician. A politician is like, if you single-handedly lose the game for your team, you become evil. And the risk is that you have to trust in the storyteller's read of how detrimental you are to the good team. And if you fail, you lose and become good. With this is a not evil Scarlet Woman that potentially creates an extra evil player. So the Turncoat has to try and be a good catch for the demon. Or if the demon dies, the Turncoat's in a scenario where they aren't just going to get executed immediately because everyone knows that they're Turncoat. So you want to have some kind of a bluff ready. You become the demon, but then the Turncoat doesn't know who the evil team is. So they're trying to figure it out. It's like something along the lines of a lunatic, but it's also kind of not that far away from what the Fangu does anyway. So I was really playing around with the ideas of what should an outsider be doing. Like, an outsider should be good for most of the time, and then given an opportunity to betray the good team and become evil, which is how I've written a lot of outsiders over time. Scoundrel is the same. You register falsely to townsfolk abilities. If the demon is executed and you voted, you might become evil and the demon. So you spend the entire game trying to be good guy, find the demon, execute them. You're specifically extra motivated. and then you might become evil and the demon if you succeed. This is really good for being able to choose when. Obviously, you can't do this on the final day because it's a bit rough. The good team just kind of loses for free. That's not really that good. But if the demon's executed on the first day due to a misplay or something, then the game doesn't end and there's no re-rack, which I think is alright. Next up is the Imitator. This is one that I still use. This is one that I like a lot. You start knowing one in-play character. You are mad that you are that character, or that character dies, even if you are dead. So you are stuck. You have to pretend to be this character forever, or that person dies. So if you find and you trust that the person that really was that character is dead, is the time when you can come out, or on the final day. The small alteration to the text of this character that has happened since then is dies tonight. They don't die immediately, so it's not confirmable like that. But the idea is to do something like a pixie. With the pixie, you're a townsfolk that gets one piece of information, and then you maybe have an upside. Piece of information is knowing one in-play character, and then the upside is that you get a different ability if you're lucky, I guess. The Imitator is you start knowing one in-play character, you have a really good piece of information, but you are now cursed with keeping that person alive, and if you fuck up, they die, which I think is way more interesting. And especially if it's a really impactful info character, you have to give out misinformation, you have to convince everyone of this, and it's a lot harder to kind of keep it alive in that way. So I really like the Imitator. It's good at adding a simple madness, because it's not that hard. You're like, oh, I just have to be this guy, which I do like. Next is the Potter. Once per game at night. Asterisks. Choose a player. That player, if poisoned, is now sober until death. If not, and is good, they are now poisoned until the Potter dies. So basically, if you found a player that is, let's say, Puzzle Master drunk, Nodashi poison, we're looking at something that is permanent, because if it's just like a one night's poisoner thing, then not really very good. The Potter removes it. But if you miss, then they become poisoned. But it doesn't poison evil players. I think, and this is a townsfolk, by the way. I just think, actually, it might have been an outsider. I honestly don't remember. This is a character like, this is a really cool idea, and I just don't think it comes together in the way that I want. It's a bit tough. It doesn't quite work the way that I want. I like the idea of a townsfolk being able to remove poisoning from something, but it seems a bit too powerful if it just kind of always hits. So the Potter and the other character before, the Anzena, playing around sobriety like the Traveler, the Barista, does. Is something that I do want to play with. It doesn't quite work here. And so these characters have since been left behind and replaced with other new different things. Next, you might recognize, we're looking at a big chunk of the tarot script characters. Because the tarot script wanted to make every single thing according to the theme, there is existing characters that are just kind of reskinned. And some that are just existing characters with small things changed, but I'll run through them. First is the Empress. You start knowing the Emperor. This is similar to like the King and how the King and stuff's supposed to work, which is kind of what I was building on for that. But it guarantees the Emperor is in play. If the Empress is in play, it makes sense. It doesn't really do anything if he's not. And so this is trying to be like, yes, this is the beginning of a trust circle with the good team. Next is the Chariot. I kind of like this one. You start knowing one good player. If you die at night, learn another. So this is the Steward. Makes one friend. Then, upside, you die. You learn a new friend. which I think is not terrible. Like, it's a you start knowing character that doesn't stop being useful. Like, you just don't stop doing stuff. Like, starting like, oh, if I'm bluffing and I'm getting killed, then I get value, which I kind of like. Next is Justice. Each night, asterisk, you learn if you nominated a character type different to your previous nominations. This is the Balloonist, but with nominations. So instead of the Balloonist, which just learns random people and you know that they're not matching their character type, Justice can check people to see if they're matching a character type. It should be previous nomination singular, but it's like, I nominate someone, I nominated the demon, okay, I then nominate the next guy, that was a townsfolk, I learn a yes, they were different, which I think is kind of interesting. You can kind of check people. Then we've got Strength. Each night, asterisk, choose 2 players. A chosen good player closest to an evil player cannot die tonight. It's bad. It's a bit clunky. It's just trying to be an innkeeper but remove the poisoning, and it just meant like you pick 2 people and then only one of them is like really relevantly protected, but you're casting a wide net. So it's like slightly better than a monk, except the monk has the upside of the "you are safe" wording. This is not like that. I haven't seen it be good enough to be proud of it. I think it's fine. It's fine for what the script needed. Next is World. Each night, asterisk, you may choose a player that was nominated but received 0 votes yesterday. They die. This was created based on a trend that I would see a lot. Someone would nominate, a bunch of votes would get put on there, someone else would nominate, have a really good case for that person to die, but because the other person was first was really convincing, people are like, why would I bother, I want that first guy to die, gets no votes, goes through, and the second person was actually the way better kill, or whatever. And so in that way, people had to at least vote one time to stop World from potentially being able to kill them. It meant that you kind of had to play it. It kind of meant that if you're getting to low alive player counts, voting early for World and other people can jump on. It kind of encouraged voting, and if any, but it also meant that if World is in play, they're sitting there like, I can't do anything, which kind of sucks. I feel like this would work nicely reworked as a demon, where it's like, you may kill any player. It's like each night you choose a player, they die. Additionally, you may kill an extra player if they were nominated and received 0 votes or something like that. Because then all the good teams are like, oh fuck, I have to vote on everything. But the idea of the character was to encourage our behavior, but the actual singular player's experience of being that character sucks, unfortunately. Next up is Star. Each night, if the number of steps, only counting alive players, from you to the demon has changed, you wake to learn this. This gives you 2 important pieces of information. The first one, if the demon moves on its own volition, something like the Fangu, something like a new demon being created, like if a pit hag puts a demon closer to you or further away from you and the previous one dies, something like that, you get notified. The other thing is that if a player is killed or executed between you and the demon, the number of alive player steps changes. So you will potentially learn what side of the circle the demon is on the first time you're notified, and then every time after that you're like, ooh, has the demon moved? Have we just killed somebody on the right side of the circle? Which I think is a really interesting info character. It's extra helpful on a script where the demon does move around, which in the tarot script, yes, it does. So there's that. If no one is executed and the star wakes, you're like, oh shit, the demon has moved without killing a person or whatever, which I think is cool. It's really vague. I think the downside is very vague. This was kind of like a fix for the notary accountant problem, where it's like I just learn the number of steps to the demon and then I win. And this is still slightly too far away, but I kind of like the idea, and maybe there's a way to refine this and make it better. Next is temperance. On the night before the final day, if you are still alive, learn all of the dead evil characters. I like this character a lot. If you are patient, if you make it to the final day, you enter the final day knowing how many alive evil players there are, knowing which dead evil players you play. So imagine if you learned that there guaranteed was a dead imp, you knew there was an imp star pass. If you knew guaranteed there was a Fangu jump, if you knew guaranteed that there was a dead spy that nominated a virgin, any of these pieces of information guaranteed is really powerful. So in the games when we ran the terrorist script, temperance died the night before it would have activated both times. So I can't speak to how powerful it is. But I really like the idea of it. I think it could be really strong. It's the ultimate please for the love of God, don't kill or execute me. I'm so powerful when it finally happens. So I think there's a sort of excitement there with that character that I really like, and I feel like should be something that I look at and keep for the future. Currently, it only exists on the tarot script. A lot of the characters I've made for the tarot script just sit on there, and then if I want to run that script, it has all this cool, unique stuff. But the idea behind me creating these characters is a skill thing. It's like, oh, I made a mistake with this. Oh, I learned and understood why this didn't work or what this problem was. So if I am working on stuff in the future, whether it be this game or I'm working on other stuff, I go, oh, this thing was a cool idea, but I understand why it didn't work. I should be trying this, or maybe this would work instead. Which is the whole goal, is self-improvement. And the reason why I'm making this video is that if you're a person that enjoys making homebrew stuff, you can learn from my mistakes. Probably, I hope. Next is the Emperor. Keeping in mind, we have the Emperor's best friend, the Empress, already. But Emperor, if you die at night, all players who believe they are a townsfolk become that townsfolk and become your alignment. They learn this. +1 Hanged Man. Hanged Man is the marionette. Shocker. But having the drunk think that they are a townsfolk and become that townsfolk, no longer be the drunk, pretty powerful. The marionette stop being a minion and become the townsfolk that they think they are, pretty powerful. So again, just trying to fit those same vibes that the King Choir Boy kind of setup has, right? Empress knows the king, in this case the Emperor. The Emperor, if they die, has a major detriment to the evil team. And the Emperor guarantees that one of the minions is a marionette, which is kind of cool. This is a thing, adding a specific character or interacting with a specific character is a thing that I explore later, and we'll talk about it in a minute. But I really like how this works. I think this is a cool idea. And finding out that you were the drunk the whole time and now you are actually a real character is also very good. When you were the marionette, now you are a townsfolk, and you go, well, this guy, the demon, told me I was his marionette. We should kill him. Which I think is kind of cool also. Next is the Sun. Once per game, during the day, privately asks us to return a question where the answer would be a number of steps. This is similar to the accountant and the notary, where you just ask how many steps away the demon is, and it's a little bit too powerful. So that's something that needs work. add a clarifying statement, add, I don't know, something, scrap it, replace it with something else. I don't know. Okay, next we're done with the Tarot Townsfolk. And the Tarot is the only one where the outsiders' meanings are separated, by the way. Next is the Pursued and the Informant, which are from the current version of the Empire of Dirt script. The Pursued is really complicated, honestly, and has a paired demon, the Relentless, which we'll see later. But Pursued, each night, choose a player, not yourself. A townsfolk chosen swaps characters with you. An evil player, if chosen, learns how many steps away you are. Now, before I explain that, let me read out the paired demon, Relentless. Each night, asterisk, choose a player. If they are the pursued, you win the game. This has since been changed to it's like each night a player might die. You choose a player. If they are the pursued, you win the game. Plus square brackets, the pursued is guaranteed to be in play. The Relentless is picking people every night trying to find the pursued. The pursued moves around the grimoire, swapping characters with other townsfolk. If they accidentally hit an evil player, the evil player learns one of two players is the pursued because they get a steps number. Which is really fun. I actually really like this character. It works really well with the Relentless. You can play it without the Relentless and it is just fine. The way that it works with some things is kind of janky. Whenever the pursued swaps with the townsfolk, it refreshes their ability. So if you're a seamstress, you use your ability to swap with the pursued. The new seamstress gets to seamstressed again, and the pursued can move on. And so it refreshes a lot of townsfolk abilities. So it means that you should have a script that is better having each night characters and having few one-time characters. Because what can happen is you go, okay, I swap with the seamstress, cool. Swap with that guy, now that guy swap with the seamstress. And we kind of bounce around a little bit and get multiple activations of one-time abilities. Imagine if you got to use the Slayer 4 times. It's a bit rough. Because it's intended to be one time. So it needs a home on a script that it's not going to be a big deal if it's refreshed a bunch. Refreshing the Virgin actually is kind of bad. Doing it one time and confirming 2 players, very good. Doing it 2 times and confirming 4 players is like, okay, but you've lost 2 shots at the demon, and in a 7-player game, you only get 3 of them. It's not great. So yeah, it depends. I really like how it works. But maybe it needs to not refresh. Maybe it needs to poison the person it just swapped with or something like that. Maybe. But because the pursued just needs to get lucky one time, it's pretty good. Also, if the pursued is executed and dies and stays in a dead player, the pursued might not know to check dead players. Another thing to consider. Anyway, next up is the Informant, which is an outsider. Each night, choose a player, not yourself. If you vote differently from them tomorrow, the demon learns their character. This is a suggested fix for the butler that I uploaded to this channel 5 years ago, something like that. It's much easier to track online. You just check the voting. Did the informant vote, but the demon didn't, or the demon did vote and the informant didn't? The butler is restrictive. The informant is checking to see if they are the same. So if the demon does, if the master, I think it's what they call it, does vote for something and you don't, the demon learns the master's character. Now, this is a really interesting drawback because if your master is the demon, if your master is an evil player, the demon learning that, not a big deal. If your master is an important townsfolk character, an important info character, the demon learning that, it's really shithouse. Which is what I really liked about that. And this character specifically, again, goes in the Empire of Dirt script, but with the Pontifact, where the Pontifact wins the game if you can guess 4 characters, which players, which we'll get back to later, but the informant just straight up telling you who a bunch of people are is too powerful, is insane, is very scary. So I actually really like how the informant works. It's probably a little bit underused. Also check out, see how I can just load it up here. I really like the icon work too. Shout out to past me for making this. Anyway. Next up is the outsiders from the Tarot script. The Hierophant is exactly the same as the informant. You can see that this is an idea that I've had a while. The difference is the Hierophant specified alive, which I felt at the time worked better for the Tarot script. Because if you select a dead player, they're less likely to vote, especially if someone's like just died from the demon. They're less likely to vote. You want to vote for something, you're telling the demon about dead players is less good, but it's, I don't know. Anyway, next is lovers. You start knowing all lovers. If one of you dies, the other dies too. So there's going to be exactly 2 people of this one character. They know each other. If either of them die, they both die. It's kind of cute. I don't hate it. It works best because it's not intended to add an additional outsider. That's a little bit too punishing. It works best if it's in slot of 2. The next is the Hermit, and I also have a there's another one of these characters that has this ability, the Hermit, but it is a recluse adjustment. You register as evil and as a minion or demon, even if dead. The recluse. But additionally, if you are alive on the final day, become evil. This is intended to stop the recluse from being a suicide risk where you go, hello, I'm an outsider. Like, what outsider are you? I'm the recluse. Well, you have no reason to want to be alive. You should let us execute you. Okay, I don't really have a good defense for that. Which is less a critique of the character and more how the meta around the character has developed, where everyone just believes that they should be dead, even though that really doesn't go away when they're dead. But like if you're next to an empath or something like that, then you are better dead. And as an outsider that's not going to do anything else other than be annoying, it's kind of hard to argue against that. But Hermit has upside if you are able to stay alive. If you are able to find a way to make it to final 3, you become evil. Trying to encourage the patterns of play that you want with character design. In the same way as the butler, one of the main complaints about the butler people have is that people can cheat, people can game the system. You're like, alright, whatever, that's fine. Make a version that encourages the play pattern you want to see. This is kind of the same. Trying to avoid people playing it as a suicide risk, and it kind of has a reason to exist. But there you go. Then we have our minions from the Tarot script. I believe one is missing, and I don't know what it is. So sucked in. You don't get to hear about it. First is Tower. If there is only one demon and they are executed, choose a player to become evil and become the demon. This is like a Scarlet Woman, except instead of them being a magnet for it, they get to pick the person that picks up the mantle of the demon, which is kind of like a Kazali vibe. You're like, well, you. More like a really detrimental summoner. This is possibly really too powerful. It should probably have like the witch clause where it turns off after a certain period of time. But I think the minions on the script are a bit too crazy. So I don't know. I really wanted something. Sorry, yeah, the Hanged Man is the 4th one that's not here for some reason, but it is just the marionette with a different name, so that's not a big deal. Look, next is Wheel of Fortune. Each night, choose a character not chosen before. So you're naming characters on the script, not players. Choose a character if that character would be executed tomorrow. their nearest clockwise townsfolk neighbor is executed instead. You can only choose each character once, so you can choose the in-play demon one time. If the demon would be executed, a clockwise townsfolk neighbor is executed instead. Insane. So powerful. Additionally, the demons on the tarot script alternate between two demons, Death and the Devil, which means that Wheel of Fortune has an opportunity to activate on the demon twice as it changes type. Kind of crazy. You also get to name like each minion one time. You're like, oh, I'm gonna name Wheel of Fortune and pick myself or whatever. Get a free townsfolk execution, which is kind of crazy, just a little bit. When we did testing of the script, it didn't end up in play, so I can't really speak to how crazy it ended up being, but it feels insanely powerful. It feels like a Wheel of Fortune. Next is Judgment. This one is a little bit complicated. I think it's too hard for the players to track it. But starting at 7, count down for every vote tallied during your nomination. So when Judgment nominates someone. At 0, a player dies tonight, then refresh this ability. So if you are in a 15-player game, you nominate someone, that person gets executed on the first day, you have at least 8 votes, an extra person dies tonight, and then it starts counting again at 7. Even if you got 15 votes, a player dies tonight, it refreshes and goes back to 7. It doesn't stack. So the idea was that you would just have like a doom clock that kind of ticked down, and Judgment had to nominate every day. So having something like a town cry to keep them in check is kind of good, and they get away with like 1 extra kill, which is not terrible. I think of the 3, it's the least powerful, and it's pretty crazy. So, alright, that is the last of the tarot characters for a little while. This is a little minion pile. These are the minions from the Empire of Dirt script. First is the Cogbelcher, which was too much. It got removed because it was too much. Each night, choose clockwise or anti-clockwise. Players in this direction to your nearest outsider might register falsely to townsfolk abilities. So, we have our circle. I'm at midnight. The one outsider in play is at 6. Half the circle will register falsely to all townsfolk abilities. It's really hard for town to find the position of the Cogbelcher to understand what Cogbelcher's impact is going to be, and it's a might, so I can just not do it. It's too vague, potentially too powerful, and just so untrackable for the good team, which I kind of hate. So it's a bit rough. It ended up getting removed. Next, Treasured, another minion. This one I really do like. On the first night, choose 2 good players. So this is after you've received your minion demon info has gone out. They become outsiders of your choice, square brackets, no outsiders in the setup. We will hear more about this later, but this is a mechanic that I really like. The treasure is kind of fun, especially when on the script we had stuff like the turncoat and the scoundrel, where you're like, oh cool, I will set up people that I know might become the demon, and I can go and talk to them later if the demon dies and the game doesn't end, which is kind of nice to have that link back to the evil team in the same way that like a Godfather might know what outsiders in play, which is kind of cool. I do like this one. I really enjoy it on the Empire of Dirt script. The next one is the Finesse. This is possibly one of my favorite characters. Each night, choose a player. You learn their character, and you may dictate what info they receive from townsfolk abilities tonight. 1 good player knows you are in play. I have since removed that last bit, the Widow's Clause part. That's fine. originally, it didn't specify townsfolk abilities. It was just you dictate what info they receive from the storyteller today. Kind of insane. And so basically, in every single game, the finesse activates on the first night and goes, "Hello, townsfolk. You've been Kazali'd. You are now this minion. Enjoy that. This is the demon, me, the finesse. And then the person who's not actually a minion is playing evil. It doesn't realize that they're a townsfolk this whole time. And stuff like that. Like, it was kind of janky, but upside, it can do cool things like the Night Watchman. It can create Night Watchman information. I pick you, viewer. I pick you. I'm the finesse. I pick you. I tell the storyteller, I want this person to receive Night Watchman information saying that I was the Night Watchman. Cool. Totally doable. And the same was for the Antiquarian. And there's the reason why the Antiquarian info work like that. Which I like. The other thing, and a mistake that I made in one of the games that I ran on this channel, I don't know if the video is live yet or not, but when the finesse interacts with a player, they cannot receive any information, any townsfolk ability information that the finesse didn't dictate. So if the finesse says this happens and a Night Watchman has selected that player, no Night Watchman ping. If an Antiquarian has selected the player that's been finessed, no Antiquarian ping, which is also pretty strong. But this is like the Giga Poisoner. The idea is that the more well versed in the game the finesse is, the more insane power they have over what narrative they want to create. But additionally, they learn the character of the person that they've selected. So in a game with something like the Pontifact that's just trying to find people, or the Relentless that's just trying to find the pursued, the finesse can help do that and create some misinformation along the way. And so that's why those three characters are all in the same script together. Next is Empire. You've heard about the script Empire. I've done a lot. That is because it is the home of Empire. And then most of these other demons you'll see were picked up and rejected from that script. But let's start with Empire. Each night, choose a player, they become marked. All marked players are mad about something false each day or die tonight. You win if all alive players are mad. So, most of the time, players won't die to the Empire ability. But you have a secret clock of mad players that will eventually win you the game, regardless of whether people are alive or dead, which I really like. This demon's actually perfect for Teensyville, because if there's 6 players, you have 6 days. 6 whole days. It means you can have a Teensyville that is really chunky, runs for an hour. People are trying to solve a puzzle. The Empire is putting in so much misinformation with the madness. People have got to be mad for so long. It's really fun. I really enjoy it. It's probably my favorite demon that I've created. It's been the most successful, the most popular. It's really cool. It's a lot of mental effort if you're playing it in a big game, and that's kind of why I'm like just happy for it to sit in the Teensyville, because I do have a nice Teensyville script for it that I like. But I have since revamped it to be a different, same idea, different execution to work better on a bigger script, which is a character called Whisper Cuffs, which we won't hear about just yet. It's not on this list. But I really like Empire. I really like it for Teensyville. Next up is Artifice. Quick preface: Artifice from above, Black Mold, Cataclysma, Forecaster. All were tried and didn't work. So keep that in mind. Artifice, each night, Asterix, choose a player, they die. If no one was executed today, a good player becomes poisoned that night. Going back to what we were saying before about creating characters that encourage the types of play that you want to see. The Vortox is really good at getting people to execute on the first day, one time. Artifice is like, well, if you don't execute every day, a good player becomes poisoned forever. Which means that the more times that you miss, the more times that you don't execute, the worse it is and the harder it is to find the demon. Which I like. I think this is good conceptually, but it doesn't work in encouraging people to execute in the way that I want it, realistically. Like, you're like, oh no, there's a downside. But I heard stories of those groups of people that would play Sex and Violence. They would refuse to execute on the first day, and if it's a Vortox, you just re-rack. They just force you to re-rack, and you're like, that's not in the spirit of the game or how the character's supposed to work. They're like, don't care. We don't want to have to be forced to execute anyone. If that's the scenario, then that's the scenario, right? And so there is always going to be play archetypes where you have to kind of be worried about and deal with how they're playing the game, and creating characters to encourage the things that they enjoy instead of creating characters to punish the things that they're doing different is better. It's just the way to go, right? Okay, next is From Above. Each night, Asterix choose a player, they die. After the 12th good player nomination, a minion becomes From Above. Square brackets, no From Above in play. The storyteller always has this ability. You never put From Above into the bag. From Above is always not in play. But after the 12th good player nomination, a minion becomes From Above. So there's always a clock slowly ticking down. Everyone's ticking, everyone's checking, and then 2 deaths at night will start happening, right? The idea is I don't want this game to drag. It doesn't matter how many plays we have. From Above is going to come in and speed things up if the game is dragging. That was the idea behind creating the character. Didn't really specifically work, but it kind of, I think it's heading in the right direction. I think having something not in play that can help control the speed and size of a game is a good idea. This one didn't really work like that. I really think having the 4 demons and trying to solve the puzzle is the best part of the game. Sex and Violence does this really well. From Above takes away from that. You know it's probably going to come eventually. You'll have a 2 demon scenario at some point. There isn't going to be deaths arbitrary. It's intended to start killing more people and be unbalanced. And it encourages good players to nominate less, which means they're less likely to execute the demon, which means they're less likely to execute people in general, which means that they're less likely to move the game forward at all, which is not what I want. So it's a little bit contradictory, but the idea is kind of there. Next is Black Mold. This is a tough one to talk about because the inspiration behind this is trying to fix a character that was from playtesting and doesn't exist, as I understand it. So I've been in trouble in the past with accidentally spoilering things that were not supposed to be revealed. So if I get an angry message from Evan, I'm sorry. I promise. All of these characters I've made up. Some things may have been inspired by stuff that was scrapped. But Black Mold, each night, no asterisks. Choose a player, they gain the ability, when you nominate, you die, and the nominee gains this ability. The idea is that you would slowly mark players, and then nominating would kill people and create more people that would nominate and kill people. This is one that I was just like, yeah, look, this is kind of I want to play with. Didn't end up running it. I do like that idea. The problem is Clocktower struggles with timestamps. It struggles with creating things that happen in the future, and it struggles with having detached information. The greatest example of this is the Puka. The Puka was like, I poison this player, tomorrow they die, I pick somebody else, they're poisoned. And the way that the Puka, when they were interacted with, like if a monk would protect the Puka target, if the Puka became poisoned at any point, what would happen to that thing, right? I've poisoned someone, they're supposed to die. I've poisoned someone, I've been poisoned and have no ability, are they still supposed to die? All right, this is a thing that I've done in the past that's supposed to happen in the future, but Clocktower says this thing whereas if I'm poisoned, I have no ability ostensibly, regardless of whether it's past, future, or present. Creating a character that gives something, gives an ability to somebody else. Empire, which marks players, and the marked players are mad, they're still marked forever. If Empire is poisoned, they don't mark any new players, and the players that are mad do not have a downside. Black Mold was just like, well, we just want people nominating and killing people. If nobody nominates, no one dies. Again, same problem as from above, where you want people nominating because you want the game to be moving forward. Next, finally, we get to talk about the demons from the tarot script. First one is Devil. Each night, asterisk, choose a number of steps. One player this distance from you dies, and the other receives false information tonight. If a minion dies this way, you become death, so your character type changes to the other demon. Which is kind of cool. So you can set up for your future turns, for your future nights, the ability to change. The way that this was supposed to be interesting was that if you look at the circle, the person dies, the person opposite them, in respect to the demon, gets false information. So the person goes, I got info that's definitely wrong, and that guy died, the demon is one of two people. That was kind of the idea, which I do kind of like. I do really like how these two demons work, but obviously you have to know that you got false info. But once the devil becomes death, they gain disability instead. Each night, asterisk, choose a player with a dead neighbor, they die. The first outsider this kills becomes an evil devil and you die instead. So this is a slightly more complicated Fangu. Your choices on who dies are limited. Also, devil is always the demon that starts in play, and then it can just turn into death and turn back. But whilst it is death, it can then jump, hits an outsider, that outsider becomes an evil devil, and then you die, and then that devil can kill a minion, becomes death, hits another outsider, right? It kind of bounces around a lot. But it's really mechanically solvable, which is what I liked about it. Because if you go, ooh, this player died, they had a neighbor that was already dead. Cool, we have death. Something happened where a person not next to a dead player died. They go, ooh, we've just had a change of demon character, right? Like, you're really able to math it out, really figure it out, and see kind of what was happening, which I like. This is a design philosophy and two characters that are intended to function as one, but alternate between two states is something that I really like, and I might play around with in the future, or just like reskin these to be more generic demons that you just know belong together, and then have a script that runs them instead of the tarot script. But I kind of like how it works in the tarot script at the moment. Okay, next we've got the Swagger Babble. This is kind of a meme of a demon ability that was inspired during playing a Yaga Babble game, so I wrote it down. It's how you should do stuff, I guess. The ability is each night, any characters that you named aloud during nominations might die. So that's, yeah. People are just looking for people saying lots of characters. And if you go, I'm the balloonist, you are the only person that said balloonist out loud yesterday, and I died, and you know it's a swagger babble, you're gonna get executed. I really like the idea of it, but the listening for what the demon says archetype of demon is kind of hard to hide. Feels like it depends. Like the Yagababble phrase is usually something that's inconspicuous. That's kind of the idea, right? With the Swagger Babble, it's just if you named any characters out loud during nomination. So if you nominate, you go, look, this person claimed be this thing. I think that they're actually this thing. I'm this thing. All three of those characters might die, which I think is kind of cool. This is not one that I tested. This is just one that I wrote down as a meme. It might be a lot of fun. I think it's a cool idea. It's a lot more crazy than the Yagababble phrase. Potentially much more powerful. There's going to be many times where you're like, bro, I can't kill all those people. Pick 2 or something. So also Yagababble can kill at any time. This is specifically during nomination, so it's a bit easier for players to kind of track, I think. Anyway, next up is the Pontifact. This is another one of the demons that I really like from the Empire of Dirt script. This is each night, asterisk, a player might die. On the first night, learn 4 in-play characters. Each night, guess which players, which of these characters, if guessed correctly, win the game. So you'll learn 4 characters, and often it's something like the Exorcist, the Poppy Grower, the Night Watchman, like that kind of stuff, right? The Exorcist, which if hits the demon does not get to guess, but learns who the Exorcist is. The Night Watchman, if they pick an evil player, has the extra bad downside of the Pontifact knowing who they are, and stuff like this. Where the Pontifact just cares about who these 4 people are. The last time I played with this character, I gave the Pontifact the Juggler buff, and they were able to juggle and find out who a couple of these people were. And they had 3 out of 4 correct for the entire time, and they couldn't figure out who the imitator was because they were mad as a different character the entire game, and super believed to be that character that they were mad at. It's very good. And so it was really interesting getting them to guess every night, and they go, it's these people and this, and they're like this close every time, which is really fun. But it also means that like town can't publicly discuss characters, can't really hard claim too confidently, which is kind of fun. Next is Cataclysma, which is kind of again a meme character. This is again born of the I am trying to make sure the game doesn't run too long. But each night, asterisk, Rochambeau the Storyteller, which is the canon nomenclature for Scissors Paper Rock. If you win, choose 3 non-minion players, the rest die. You instantly go to final day, you do not kill people along the way. Which I thought was kind of cool. But obviously it's not great. Doesn't work with a lot of characters. It's kind of like a bad Boom Dandy. Boom Dandy has gameplay. Cataclysm is too random. So it should be just like once per game. Choose 3 non-minion players, the rest die. Or something. Anyway. This is scrapped for a reason, obviously. Next up, we have the Fearcaster. This is a really funny character to me. Each night, asterisk, choose a player, they die. If a townsfolk, outsider, minion, and demon died in this way, in this order, you win. So first pick, you hit a townsfolk. Second pick, you hit an outsider. Then you have to be so confident that it's an outsider that you pick a minion the next day. And you go, okay, how confident are we, fellow evil team, that I've been correct so far? Because then you have to pick yourself, and if you were correct, you win the game. It's a bit silly, it's obviously broken with stuff like the spy or the widow, any grimoire learning characters. Look, I think it's bad. I think it was really funny. It's really interesting, but I think it's really bad. Last one, Relentless. Each night, asterisk, choose a player. If they are the pursued, you win the game. +1 pursued. Kind of talked about this a little bit before. I added the thing where each night a player might die because you want people dying. Also, people dying at night can potentially trap and hide the pursued. But the Pontifex, the Relentless, I really wanted demons that had an alternate win condition, still killing people like regularly, but instead of I make it harder for the good team to find where I am in this way. Instead, it's I put pressure on the good team to solve the game faster because I'm closing in on winning, which I kind of like. I think that's kind of cool. Now, I'm going to give a sneak peek to the custom script that I'm currently working on. It is called Fighting the Fog. Alright, close this. So, this is our character list. This is called Fighting the Fog. I'm going to go through some stuff. There's a lot of existing characters. The idea is to create this at the difficulty level of sex and violence. That's always kind of my goal. I don't want anything more complicated than that because it's a lot harder to get people to say yes to try something out if it's bonkers insane. So I'm trying to run stuff at the difficulty level of sex and violence. So let's run through. The chef. You start knowing how many Pez Viva players there are. I'll come back to this one later. I might just kind of skip through quickly what townsfolk we have and then come back and explain why they're there later. The librarian, the Shigenja, the dreamer, the village idiot, snake charmer, balloonist, town crier. We have a lot of really good, powerful info characters. And then we've got the really powerful disruption in the magician or the puppy girl. I don't know that you can really put them in there together. The puppy girl never dies. The magician just never has an ability. So I feel like that should be a jinx, but isn't. The pacifist. Executed good players might not die. Bit of a rogue. But first custom character. Townsfolk. Shrine Maiden. You start knowing which demon is in play, if any. This seems insanely powerful, but when you have a bit more knowing of what the demons are, it's a bit less insane. And additionally, the lobotomist, which also seems insane, but the lobotomist, each night asterisk, choose a player. If a minion is chosen, they become a good village idiot. Now, that will often require the poppy grower in play. Often. Or the magician, because if the lobotomist hits a minion, they become a good village idiot. They go, well, I know the demon is one of two people, and then the demon has an opportunity to claim to be the magician. That has to be pretty quick on it. But the lobotomist is kind of insanely super powerful, except in certain circumstances, which we're going to get to in a minute. But we have our first outsider, the damsel. No huntsman, just a damsel. The drunk, a classic. The stalker. Now, this is what we were talking about before. At the start of the game, the demon chooses a player to become the stalker. If the demon is ever slated for execution and does not die, you become evil. And the -1 outside thing is just the way that the stalker is set up because it's not in the bag. It's kind of like the marionette or the drunk. No one picks up the stalker. You know the stalker's going to be in play, and then the demon picks who it's going to be. This is like the treasured. Where the treasured picks two people, they become outsiders of their choice. The demon on the first night is working up. They go, look, you have a stalker. Tell us who it is. And they pick someone, that person becomes the stalker. And then the second part is for the stalker. If the demon is ever slated for execution. So again, back with that scenario, 8 players, 4 votes on the demon. And then the demon does not die, so it's either tied or lifted. then the stalker becomes evil. So there's an opportunity for the demon to go to the stalker and go, look, I know you're the stalker, I created you. Let's try and lift off me and we'll get you turned evil. This can happen on a final day, this can happen whenever. I think this is really cool. This is the classic, I'm an outsider, maybe I'm good, maybe I'll become evil and play for the evil team. But it's a lot more visible. The other ones, which is like you might become the demon, or you might become evil, is a bit wonky. This one is like, if you figure out who the demon is and you specifically save their life, you become evil, which I like. I think that works mechanically. I think that works nicely. And then next we have the imitator. You start knowing one in-play character. Even if you are dead, you are mad, you are that character, or that character dies tonight. Again, this is just a revised text because it's gone through a few iterations, but I really like this one. You're stuck, you have to be that guy, you have to be that guy forever. And if you stop being that guy, the actual person dies. This is like really good for an each night info character. It's really funny to be a village idiot. You're like, oh look, I'm the village idiot. If I stop being mad that I'm the village idiot, everyone that is that character dies. Which is kind of brutal. You're just adding misinformation forever so that the person who's getting real information can get real information, which I kind of like. Alright, next up, we've got 3 existing minions: Scarlet Woman, Marionette, Devil's Advocate. Marionette, very important. We'll come back to this one in a minute. Has a bunch of clashes. It's not really a big deal. These ones are fine. I really hate jinxes in general. They used to be way worse. Nowadays, jinxes just like, look, remember, this is maybe a thing you have to think about. Whereas before, jinxes were like, everyone will hate you and have a terrible time. Please never fucking put these 2 characters on a script together. Things have gotten better. But then we have the finesse. Now, this one in particular is choosing a live player. You learn the character and you may dictate what info they receive from townsfolk abilities. There's no widow's ping. No one will learn if finesses in play. Because I believe that the nerf for it being specifically to townsfolk abilities is fine. Like, you can't make someone think that they've become a stalker. You can't. So, yeah, moving on. I don't want to go into every finesse play possible. There's a lot. It's crazy. Let's talk about the demons. We have 4 custom demons for this script. I really like them. And the design brief when it came to working on them was, what is the thing that makes the Vortox special, right? Even if the Vortox is not in play, not the demon that went into the bag, the Vortox means you have to consider all information could be false, and additionally, you must execute people. Even though it's not in play. It doesn't matter, you can't take that risk. You have to be mindful of these things. I wanted to create demons that set up a scenario where you have to be mindful of potentially which one, even if it's not in play. So they all have to be scary, just being written on the script. First one is Sulamar. Each night, asterisk, choose a player, they die. On your first night, a townsfolk receives misinformation to make you look like a good player. You learn what? In the first game that we ran recently, which was testing for this character, they were sitting next to a Shigenja, so the Shigenja got the misinformation, pointing in another direction. The Sulamar player learnt that it was the Shigenja that got the wrong information. They intuited that the Shigenja must have been nearby. They gave the bluff to their minion to be the Raven Keeper, and then killed their minion. And then the minion claimed to be the Raven Keeper, said, I saw that you were the Shigenja. Shigenja player was like, I didn't tell anyone that I was the Shigenja. I believe you entirely. And then the Raven Keeper was like, well, I received the Night Watchman ping from the demon. That guy has to be a good guy. And I'm confirming you, so we have to kill the other dude. And the evil team won by a landslide, might I add. So the Sulamar is very scary, very powerful, but I don't think it's as crazy as the Vortox. I think it's less insane, more personable. But all of the first night info characters, also, it's on your first night. So if a Sulamar is created later on, the night that the Sulamar is created is when that will happen. This script doesn't matter, but in general. So let's have a look at some of our townsfolk where that might happen. If a village idiot selected the Sulamar, they might learn good, even if they're not the drunk one. Shigenja in wrong direction, a librarian might see you as an outsider. And then if that's the case, I would give them a bluff of the outsider that was seen. Otherwise, it just kind of falls flat. Could get a wrong chef number. Probably isn't as convincing or as good. You could get a shrine maiden that learns the wrong demon in play, especially if it implicates a specific different player. And then if the dreamer selected you. So before, we had a lot more, like in the test script that I ran for the Sulamar, we had a lot more first night info characters. And it was a bit overwhelming, and it was also a bit like, oh, yeah, if there's only one of us in play, then they definitely got, if there's a Sulamar, this is a guy that ate it, you know? This one is a bit more creative with how it's going to go, so I could do a balloonist if I show the demon on the first night, and then I show a townsfolk, and then I show not a townsfolk, or something. I'm not sure. You're supposed to look like a good player. The imitator could learn an in-play character, which is your bluff, something like that. But yeah, I think the Sulamar is a really good character because it's subtle in its effect. The Voltox is like, fuck everyone, all of you. Whereas the Sulamar is like, there is one guy that trusts me. That one guy is going to make all the difference. Alright, next one is the Maestro. Each night, asterisk, choose a player, they die. +1 outsider. Additionally, all minions and outsiders are marionettes. All of them. They're all specifically evil marionettes. So if there's 2 outsiders by default, you will get an extra outsider. You will have 3 marionettes. In the scenario where there's 2 outsiders at default, I believe is 12 players and 9 players. So in a 9-player game, you'll have the demon, the default marionette, 3 minion marionettes. You'll have 5 evil players. But it's like herding cats. It's gonna be really hard to convince all these people that they are marionettes, convince all these people to try and vote. And that's why the chef goes kind of crazy, because the chef is like, why am I getting such a huge number? It has to be a maestro. Basically, the maestro, there's a million marionettes, and especially the drunk is now also a marionette. So a player that could become the drunk instead becomes the marionette. And so literally any townsfolk could become that floating marionette. And they don't all have to neighbor the demon. The demon does not have that many people that can sit next to them at once. So basically the setup outside, all the outsiders aren't actually minions. Now, this is a really interesting interaction with the damsel, because the damsel has a pretty good chance of just being a marionette. So being a marionette. Which is cool. Now, I don't know if this is insane. It is evil with a bunch of extra people, but they're not very well coordinated. They all think that they're good, and then the one maestro has to go and out themselves to every single one of them and convince them that they are the marionette, which I think is very funny. Okay, next one is the Paraslither. Each night, choose a player, they die. All of these demons have that same first text. But additionally, on the final day, dead players that do not vote become evil. The whole idea is to put the fear into the dead players to make it harder to vote for the demon by convincing everyone that it is a Paraslither game. You will become evil and join me and we'll win if you don't vote. If you don't vote, hold that ghost vote, you can win with me on the evil team. But what if the Paraslither is not in play? What if it's a different demon? All of the demons have the opportunity to claim to be the Paraslither and try and make it harder for the good team to vote for them, which I'm excited about. I think that is probably too powerful, but I'm interested to see how that works. Sulamar, really underpowered compared to these other two. Maestro, big reach, more harder to play. Paraslither, incredibly scary. And then finally, the Witch King. Now, I thought this was kind of funny thematically, but each night, asterisk, choose a player, they die. You can only be executed if the damsel voted for you. +1 the damsel. Now, the damsel player, instead of being like, hello, I need to find a huntsman so that I can become a real person, instead is, I have the one deciding vote of the game, or I'm a marionette. And they have to overcome this internal struggle somehow, which is really interesting. There is a clash with the marionette and the damsel. The marionette does not learn that the damsel is in play. In a scenario where it is the maestro game, it's guaranteed that the marionette is the damsel. So it's not really a big deal. So there's going to be a really interesting tension here, right? Where the Witch King is going to want to try and convince the damsel that they are a marionette, but the maestro will know which players are marionettes. The demon knows who you are as part of the ability. The you name of the demon thing is a bit whatever. But the Witch King does not, and they're going to have to go and find the damsel and convince them that they are a marionette. The Witch King has to play like they are the maestro, which I think is really interesting. And then all the demons want to play as the Paraslither on the final day, which I also think is interesting. So this is kind of what I've been working on. This is my current thing. We're going to be recording some games of this, but because of the way that the upload queue works, you're not going to be hearing about it for some time. But I would love to hear what you think about any of these custom characters. If you're working on any custom characters, post them in the comments. I would love to have a look. I have to happily go through and review and talk about reasons why I think some things work, why some things don't. With a lot of the custom characters that I've encountered in my time, it's always felt like people trying to make something insane, something so powerful, and it just makes it really hard to just play it. You just play the character. It's like way too much brain. Like there's already a lot of existing characters that are just kind of hard like that. Like Legion is really stressful for all the players involved. Atheist is really stressful for all the players involved. And so creating some of this like really wacky stuff is really difficult if it's a big, long, serious game that people are playing. Which is why I try and create stuff that's at the sex and violence kind of level, where it's like, here is some things. Here is some info. Here's some misinfo. Here's strong demons. Here is, how they're going to interact with. Oh, I have to hide. I have to make sure my character isn't known or whatever. Which is kind of cool. And I like being able to build in that space, because making more ordinary balanced characters is going to be more interesting, I think, at least. With this one, the 2 townsfolk that I have created for this script are a bit insane. But the lobotomist, right? I did say we'd come back to this one. The lobotomist on this script, you put it into play with the maestro. Alright? And he's hitting marionettes. Only marionettes. Can't hit the demon. Only hits marionettes. The marionettes don't confidently know who the demon is. The marionettes become village idiots instead, and they go, fuck, I was a marionette at some point. Either my neighbor is the demon, or it's a maestro game, and I know it's a maestro game. Because I thought I was a townsfolk a minute ago. Which is kind of cool. But you also have the floating drunk somewhere that you can put on someone and then make a marionette. So you could have a shrine maiden that knows it's not a maestro game. It's kind of cool. In the same way that lobotomist could just be a marionette, trying to make other people marionettes, just never finding anyone. And so added some super extra powerful townsfolk to counter the fact that the demons are kind of insane. So look, this is, again, a brief look at some of the philosophies, some of the ideas that I've been working with. I hope this has made you a little bit excited about working on custom characters of your own, trying out some homebrew stuff. I would love to know what your favorite one is. I definitely have some of my own favorites. If there's something that you were really excited to come and play with, let me know. But stick around. We have a Clocktower game up every week, so hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, so you can come along and watch. Every now and again we'll have custom ones, otherwise I'm just kind of playing normal stuff with the new characters that are slowly being released as they go along. So check out some of that stuff, because I've been really enjoying playing Blood on the Clocktower.